Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
So glad you're with us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've got bad, crazy, and crazy. And so, Jim, let's dive right in. This is the subject of your morning jolt, and it certainly jumps off from our bad martini yesterday. And that's a situation in Los Angeles where, if anything, the fires actually got worse because new fires started yesterday, including one in the Hollywood Hills. The Pacific Palisades fires now consumed, as of last night, more than 15,000 acres. Who knows what the number is now? There's the one up by Pasadena. And so the resources are getting stretched thinner and thinner. Political finger pointing going a lot of different directions here. But Karen Bass is back from going to the presidential inauguration in Ghana. You mentioned yesterday that she was back in town, but her arrival didn't go well, and the rest of the day didn't get any better. So let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, she was at the airport. Looks like she's in the jetway, and she has to wait for something to happen before she can move on to the next place. So she's kind of stuck there where a TV reporter somehow has a camera on her, well past security. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but nonetheless, here's just the first 20 seconds of this awkwardness.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up, please? Appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today?
That went on for a minute and a half. And so that did not instill confidence. Then she was finally at a presser, and she was trying to get helpful information to the people of Los Angeles. I say this one's on her staff, Jim, but listen to this, although the mispronunciation at the end is probably on her.
Right now, if you need help, emergency information, resources, and shelter is available. All of this can be found at URL. Los Angeles, together is how we will get through this, through the heroism of our firefighters.
Now, I looked it up, Jim. Apparently, heroism is a word, but every time I Google it, it just takes you to heroism. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening there. But junior staffer, you got to put the link in the copy. Mayor, hire better people. But in the end, Jim, in the Jolt today, you've kind of gone through this whole timeline of everything that's happened since pretty much the start of the year there, and the warnings that were available about the winds even before she left on her trip. So where do we stand with all this?
Well, first of all, on that Sky News interview, that was indeed in the jetway. So when you're part of the official delegation, the U.S. government covers flight to the event and back. It turns out there are actually direct flights from Dulles International Airport to Ghana, and she had mentioned that she was on a military flight for part of her flight home. So my understanding is, the U.S. government's covering the flight, probably on a military aircraft from Washington to Ghana. And my guess is she's flying commercial back from Washington to Los Angeles. It is at minimum a 16-hour flight if you have the minimum stopover in Dulles, if you're doing it that way. Otherwise, it can take 24 hours. It can take significantly more than 24 hours based on that. So yesterday, I made this comparison of her absence from the city as this crisis unfolded to Ted Cruz being out of town when that deep freeze hit Texas and there was a power outage. And I got a lot of grief in both directions. Ted Cruz fans saying, how dare you say this? He's only a senator. There was not so much he could do, And that's true. I just also, it's really bad to look like you're going on vacation with your family when your constituents are in a rough jam. And in the case of Bass, look, first of all, I went back, this is the point of today's morning jolt in the entire timeline. First warnings from the National Weather Service about intense Santa Ana, as they say out there, winds was on January 2nd. That is a week ago. So there was plenty of warning from the National Weather Service. They repeated it on Friday. Thursday, Friday. She departs on Saturday for Ghana. The Los Angeles Times had a large story about the drought conditions and how this combined with these Santa Ana winds makes for really severe wildfire conditions. Gets off on her plane. As I said, best case scenario, let's say she'd gotten there, realized how bad the circumstance was. It would have taken her 16 hours minimum, more likely a day to get back. She did not turn around upon it. Each day of the past week, the National Weather Service has been communicating this, and also in the last day or two, Los Angeles Fire Department was warning people and saying we are at extremely high risk of wildfires. One of the factors is that usually the Santa Ana winds are going in kind of a coming down from the north and slightly to the east, and I guess it's kind of going back, down towards the ocean. And this was more to the east. So in other words, the fires were more likely to spread. And the embers, which are sent up, it can go for miles and miles, as Smokey Bear warned us. That all is going towards a more easterly direction, deeper into the city, deeper inland, not out towards the ocean. So there were warnings, and she chose to go anyway. Even if you had wanted to say, oh, okay, like she had opportunities, she stayed until the inauguration ceremony was over. Now, there were 4 people in the U.S. delegation. I checked some of the at least English language Ghana press. The presence of Karen Bass was not mentioned in the local. It was not a big deal to the locals. Everyone would have understood if she said, I have to turn around and get back. My city's about to face a really severe crisis. Everybody, there's no reason for her not to turn around. She did not. And so I think she's getting a lot of grief from this, not just from Republicans like Rick Caruso, but from Democrats. And she deserves every last bit of this criticism. When your city is in crisis, you have it's not just the not being in the city as what is, let's face it, this is the worst wildfire in the history of the city. As of this recording, we're looking at 130,000 people who've either been ordered to evacuate or recommended to evacuate. 2,000 structures either destroyed or burned. As of this recording, 5 people killed. It takes a lot to make the LA riots back after Rodney King look like small potatoes. This is doing that. As you mentioned, 5 major fires, 3 of them completely uncontained. 1 is 40% contained, and last time I checked, 1 was about 15% contained. We are a long way from the end of this, and she just wasn't here in the days leading up to this. Now, I've heard people saying how much different was, and people who are cynical about her say, what difference would it make? Okay, but this is your job. This is what you're supposed to do. There's going to the Ghana presidential inauguration. It's a nice little perk. It's a nice little thing, but the city doesn't need you to do that. Back when she was chair of the Congressional Black Caucus in Congress, she traveled to Ghana. I'm sure she thinks very well of that country. That's all very nice, but it's not a requirement of the job. Helping your city respond when the worst wildfire danger situation is approaching, that is your job. And she utterly failed to do this. If I were the city council, I'd be removing her as soon as the crisis is over. She is, if you don't want the job, don't be there. And you have to prioritize your constituents first. You don't have time for junkets in circumstances like this.
No, I think that's right. And also not looking great is Gavin Newsom with stuff burning behind him last night, railing on Donald Trump instead of trying to figure out how to get some more water in the area. One of the questions to him yesterday was, well, what can you do about the fire hydrants? And he's like, well, that's the city's problem. So it's the city's responsibility, but you might want to be working with them instead of figuring out how to get some zingers in on the incoming president. But he's just doing what Gavin Newsom does. All right, let's talk about what your business is going to do for 2025. Hopefully it's off to a great start. And you just don't know what the conditions are going to be like, what the markets are doing, inflation, interest rates. That's out of your control. What is in your control is how to operate your business efficiently. And for more than 38,000 businesses, they are future-proofing their operations with NetSuite by Oracle, the leading cloud ERP platform. It integrates key business functions like accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one seamless system.
With a unified business management suite, NetSuite gives you complete visibility and control and enables quick, informed decisions based on real-time data. Close your books in days, not weeks, which means you spend less time on past reports and more time focusing on future growth.
Small business experts I talk to say you gotta use these tools. You can trust it to get it done, and that lets you focus on what you do best. And so you can download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/martini. The guide is free to you at netsuite.com/martini. That's netsuite.com/martini. All right, Jim, last couple of martinis, both crazy, both dealing with President Joe Biden to some extent, the last one more specifically. The Carter funeral is happening as we record this. I had a chance to kind of dip in on different pieces of it. It seems like a very nice service, excellent passage from Romans read by his grandson, providing a lot of comfort for believers. And then there were tributes given by the son of Gerald Ford and the son of Walter Mondale, both of whom have passed on, of course. But the eulogies were written by Gerald Ford and Walter Mondale. And so it tells you a couple of things. First of all, it tells you that when you reach the age of 100, not many of your contemporaries are left, but also how early after your presidency you have to plan your funeral. It's actually one of the first things you do after leaving office. And so Gerald Ford, who died 18 years ago, was on the roster to deliver one of the eulogies, and his son did an excellent job. Mondale's son talked more about what they did in the administration and so forth. But Jim, the fascination was with the ex-presidents, ex-vice presidents gallery that's always at one of these funerals, and including the current first couple, current second couple. Just watching these interactions was just absolutely fascinating today. First of all, here's Jake Tapper, not exactly hostile usually to the administration, talking about the greeting or lack thereof as the Bidens came in and sat next to Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff.
Again, you didn't see a particularly warm greeting between the first couple and the second couple, but again, we are at a funeral, so one has to take that into account.
Earlier than that, Trump comes in, and at that point, the former vice presidents are already seated. And so he kind of gives a head nod to Gore and to Mike Pence, who's there with his wife. Gore finally stands up to shake Trump's hand, which they shake hands. Mike Pence does. Karen Pence isn't moving at all. And so there's a big chill in the air, a lot of cold wind in Washington today. Not as chilly as the front row there with the president and vice president, and also with Trump and the Pences to some extent. Oddly enough, the jolliest portion of the pre-funeral conversation was Trump and Obama. Michelle, for some reason, isn't there, so they sat next to each other. And I wouldn't say they were yucking it up, but they seem to be friendlier than you would have expected, Jim. So trying to watch all these political relationships play out is not the point of the funeral, but it's kind of weird to watch today.
I was going to say, hey, look at everybody at Jimmy Carter's funeral really couldn't have qualified as one of our good martinis, but it certainly is one of our entertaining martinis. Yeah, the body language between Trump and Obama was not what you would have expected at all. And I think you've seen this argument that many Democrats have argued over the last really 9 years. Donald Trump is the next Hitler. Donald Trump is a threat to everything we hold dear in America. Donald Trump is going to destroy the Constitution, all that stuff. It really takes the edge off when you see Obama greeting him and kind of chuckling and hanging out with him. And it's very similar for all the other ex-presidents. There was a good book about I think entitled The President's Club, which talked about the relationship among presidents. And the interesting thing is the guys who have defeated each other all tend to get along, with the exception of Trump, at least at the time of the writing of this book, because there was kind of this sense of you get into the job, you suffer the slings and arrows of public criticism. You know what it's like to order men into battle and see them die because of your orders. And everybody becomes a little more sympathetic to each other. Everybody kind of understands, these are the other guys who know exactly what it's like to be in that job and to have those responsibilities and the weight of the office. So generally, these guys we've seen, Bush and Clinton and all these other, former presidents all get along with each other. And as of a couple of years ago, Trump was not part of this. And none of them felt particularly highly of Trump, and Trump did not particularly highly of any of them. And it does interesting to see, looks like there's been a bit of a thaw. The other thing is that, we don't get to see these sorts of gatherings all that often. I suppose the inauguration coming up later this month would be another time we will see this. But so it's really interesting to see the Trumps and Obamas hanging out together and seeming to get along as their, vehement political disagreements would be there. The Biden and Harris cold front coming through there. So, tying together our martinis today, one of the other figures on Biden's short list was then Congresswoman Karen Bass to be. So it's as bad as things look in L.A. right now. Imagine having that as your vice president. And a lot of people are probably like, it wouldn't have been that much worse. The other intriguing thing is you could see Doug Emhoff. I mean, Doug Emhoff's probably mad enough to slap Biden. That's he kept his temper in check as far as we know. But the Harris and Emhoff must be looking at Joe Biden and saying, you big idiot, if you hadn't done such a bad job, she'd be president-elect right now. And it did not. And Biden has to be looking at them and thinking, you backstabbing, conniving, how dare you? You pushed me out and then you lost the race. And we're kind of foreshadowing our next martini here. And then finally, apparently, Donald Trump and Mike Pence did interact at the funeral. Again, we're never going to know exactly what was said. I'm not great at reading lips, Greg, but I do think if you look closely at what Trump said, he said, Jimmy Carter would be alive today if you had the courage to do what's right, Mike. No, he didn't. I have no idea what they said to each other, but
no, that's
Mike, how you doing? How's it hanging?
It's unbelievable to watch this stuff. And at first blush, it kind of Makes you realize how old you are now, because they always seat the presidents and vice presidents in order that they served. And now Bill Clinton is on the edge of the aisle for the presidents, and Dan Quayle is on the edge of the aisle for the vice presidents. So these are guys serving in the 90s now who are the longest ago serving and are still alive. So the death of Jimmy Carter is definitely the end of a generation in American politics.
Greg, every now on this podcast, I will hold up my copy of Citizen, Bill Clinton's latest memoir, as you see how thick it is. I have finally finished it. I've written up the book review. It's probably going to be in a print edition of National Review in next month. It's fascinating to think about Bill Clinton as the old guy, because he was our national younger brother, as I think Dick Morris had said in one of his polling things. Like there was nobody saw him as this mature authority figure. He was kind of, good old Bill, I'm incorrigible. And as we saw him at the Democratic convention, and we see him at events like that, Bill Clinton got old, and which kind of means the rest of us are getting old, or at least that's the rumor going around. Greg, yeah, we still feel young. I'm sorry, we keep being told we're immature. That's the difference there.
The Cheneys did not come. They would have been in the vice presidential row. If you think the Pence handshake was frosty, that would have been something. That would have been something. But if you do have a chance to check out the funeral later, I do. The one eulogy I had a chance to listen to most was the one given by Gerald Ford's son, but it was written by Gerald Ford, obviously a long time ago, talking about how obviously they were great rivals in the 76 campaign, and they were on Air Force One together. With Reagan, obviously, was president at the time, going to the Sadat funeral in Egypt, where they got to spend some time together. They said it was particularly on the way back where they forged this friendship that went way beyond the partisan fights that they had. And I thought that was a pretty powerful statement. And so I thought that was great that they included that.
Honestly, Greg, I was always happy to see Stephen Ford. Just haven't seen much of him since When Harry Met Sally.
Yes, exactly. Oh, man. All right. Well, let's talk about Omaha steaks. They are USDA certified tender. But whether it's the steaks, whether it's the burgers, which are great size, tons of flavor, you get those great sides with the steak cut fries, desserts, wine, a whole lot more. It really is fantastic. You can't go wrong no matter what you order. And now you can subscribe at omahasteaks.com/3ml and get 12 free Omaha Steaks burgers in every shipment. That's more than a $430 value per year. And you'll get an extra 10% off and free shipping for the life of your subscription. And the cost doesn't change. Inflation-proof your eating, and lock that price in for the life of your subscription. So make life easier by subscribing to the best. Subscribe to Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com/3ml and get 12 free burgers and free shipping for the life of your subscription, plus an extra 10% off today and on every subsequent subscription shipment. omahasteaks.com/3ml.
Cutting the deficit seems simple. It's just not easy. The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. Like dieting or saving money, cutting the deficit is simple. It's just not easy. Cutting the deficit is not so much about cutting personnel. It's about cutting the money they hand out. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And as promised, more of Joe Biden. He did an exit interview a few days ago with Susan Page of USA Today, longtime fixture in the D.C. media world. And one of the things that's grabbing a lot of headlines is he's once again saying he kind of regrets getting out of the race back in July because he's confident he could have beat Trump. I don't know if that's just because of the 2020 results or he thought he was going to make this huge comeback. But it raised our eyebrows, and it's raising a lot of eyebrows, and not just among people on the right who know that Joe Biden tends to be delusional about Joe Biden's abilities. But here's Harry Enton, the data cruncher over there at CNN, who points out that at the time that Biden dropped out, Trump was ahead by 3 points or more in all the blue wall states in the upper Midwest, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and ahead by 5 points or more in all the Sun Belt states, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada. Obviously, Trump ended up winning all of those against Kamala Harris as well. And so Harry Enton says, well, that's just one snapshot in time. Let's look at some more data.
Let's look at the entire 2024 campaign. Days Biden led Trump in 2024 when Biden was still in the race. Get this, zero, nada, no days was Biden ahead of Donald Trump. Now, of course, we look at one point in time, we'll look at when Biden was still in the race. What would have happened if Biden had stayed in the race? Is there any record of candidate as unpopular as Joe Biden winning? Look, Biden's net approval rating on election day, minus 19 points. Look at this. 0 of 6 incumbents reelected with a negative net approval rating. The bottom line is this. Joe Biden was behind. He had always been behind, and he most likely would have stayed behind. And that's why I categorize his statement that he could have won the 2024 election is flat out bonkers.
Flat out bonkers. That's a good way to describe Joe Biden in a lot of ways, Jim. But how did you react to Biden always thinking once again that, of course, he would have won had he had the chance?
Yeah, I noticed we're getting barring some turn of events in the next 11 days. I'm glad that Biden did an exit interview. Susan Page, I suppose, if you're going to do somebody for the Washington Press Corps, I guess she's as good as anybody. It was not on camera. USA Today printed an entire transcript, which is appreciated. There's no way, obviously, we're getting a full White House press conference, as Obama did, Bush did. Every preceding president generally did on the way out. Reagan. Peggy Noonan made the assertion that people believe Reagan was senile and out of it by the time he ended his presidency. And she said, go back and watch that press conference. He's sharp. He's on top of it. He answers. He remembers things very well. He's full of energy. He does not look the way Biden and sound the way Biden does today. So we're not getting that. We're getting this Susan Page interview, barring some huge change. The questions were fine, and it had been previously reported in one of the places that I write, the Washington Post, that this is the way Biden and his advisors felt. I'm glad it was asked, and I'm glad he gave an honest answer. I think it also makes it very clear Joe Biden is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I will remind listeners that the Wall Street Journal had said that the pollsters on the Biden campaign never spoke to him. It's very easy to believe that Joe Biden is walking around believing that the race is... He kept saying during the campaign that it was neck and neck. And you'd look at both the national polling and the swing state polling and you'd say, no, not really. And your disapproval rating is quite high. Assessment of the economy is very low. Like, there were all kinds of indicators that, no, you weren't. And then he goes off and does the debate. And the debate goes about as well. And in his mind, he said it was because of having a cold. Now, the irony is, it doesn't seem like he had a runny nose or a hoarse voice or any of the traditional signs you have a cold. No, he just looked. The problem wasn't cold. The problem was old, right? The problem was senility. It was, And the second thing he said, he was tired from jet lag. He had come back 11 days earlier, right? Like if it takes you 2 weeks to recover from foreign travel, you can't be president of the United States. But Biden believes that at some point, the country was going to say, at the last second, the country was going to say, we really want that puppet Walter to be our president. And that was going to suddenly he was going to, turn. And then later in the interview, he says, because, Susan Page asks a very fair, natural follow-up question. Do you think you could have had the vigor to serve another 4 years in office? And Biden almost concedes it because he says, I don't know. Like, by the way, if you don't know, you should not be running for another term. Like that's you shouldn't be saying, I probably will be of sufficient health and sound mind over the next 4 years, but who knows? And I just have to roll the dice. Remember, during the campaign, there was never any talk Biden is going to step down after the 2026 midterms. We all suspected he would, but it's not like he had said, trust me, America, it's just another year, just another 2 years. At that point, Harris gets to take over or something like that. I also wasn't looking to be president when I was 85 years old, 86 years old. Now, when you're 82 or almost 82 on election day and you're running for a 4-year term, yes, that is exactly what you're doing. In 3 years, you will be 85. In 4 years, you can do 86. I know everyone listening is wowed by my math skills, but this is available to everyone. This is not some deep government secret. Now, I've heard some people say that Biden means earlier in his life he didn't picture himself running, staying as president as 85, 86. Look. Other than Chuck Grassley and maybe George Burns, there are just not a lot of people who are really sharp in their 80s. No offense to everybody in their 80s. Mom and dad are in their 80s. God love them. They're great. So far, they're pretty good with the remote control. I don't want them to have the button. This is all like very reasonable common sense stuff. And Joe Biden was well past his sell-by date, so to speak. So I'm glad we had these interviews. I think it's further evidence that Joe Biden does not know what the heck he's talking about. And I think a lot of times he's just not great at knowing what's going on around him, because yesterday in the firehouse in Santa Monica, talking about the devastation of these fires, alongside Gavin Newsom, he blurts out that he has the news that he's now a great-grandfather. On the one hand, congratulations, Mr. President, and that's lovely news for the Biden, but it really isn't the time and place. And I don't know if he felt the need to announce it because his staff wasn't going to have him in front of cameras any other time. He just doesn't seem with it anymore, and we still have 11 more days of this. The lame duck period is going about as bad as you possibly could have imagined, short of China invading Taiwan, Russia trying to take the Baltics or some other aggressive, North Korea firing or Iran setting off nukes. Those are the only things that have not happened. Good luck, America.
Well, I'm just glad to see Biden acknowledging a member of a subsequent generation. He's had some trouble acknowledging.
Oh, good point. Yes,
children being born in subsequent generations.
How dare he say he's always been a supporter? He's always been a supporter of the Navy, but not every Navy.
Yes, exactly. And he also mangled which sex the baby was. At first, he called it a baby girl, I think, baby boy. Democrats struggle with that now. I know that, but
Greg, we're not going to prejudge.
But Jim, as you're talking about that second martini, it just strikes me. I think it varies, but is there any living combination of president and vice president from the last 30 years that are really chummy? Obviously, Biden and Harris aren't. Trump and Pence aren't. Biden and Obama no longer are. Bush and Cheney probably are to some extent, but the whole Scooter Libby thing was definitely a big problem at the end. I'm sure Al Gore still blames Bill Clinton for losing in 2000. I mean, some frostiness happening all over the place.
After the election, but before Bush's inauguration, Gore went into Clinton's office. They had a 2-hour blunt exchange of views. And the term, if you hadn't put your you-know-what into that place, I'd be president. I'll let listeners fill in the blanks there. And I suspect that, ironically, in Clinton's book, he talks about getting together with Gore apparently shortly after 9/11. Gore was trying to drive back because the flights were canceled. He was driving back and stayed at Chappaqua. Clinton makes it sound like they're all buddies again. I imagine if you're Al Gore, you'd never look at him quite the same way again, thinking, you idiot, you cost me the presidency. Bush and Quayle?
Well, Bush isn't alive anymore.
Yeah, all right. So that's... Anyway, every time you make these... good luck, J.D. Vance.
It's kind of crazy. But when you think about Bill Clinton's conduct in office, it gives you one more thing to appreciate about Jimmy Carter. We gave an honest assessment of his record, but certainly his personal life is something to be admired. And as they say in the Navy, which of course Carter was a veteran, as they lay him to rest today, fair winds and following seas. President Carter. Jim, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks very much for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Thursday. Join us again on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.